Welcome back, everybody. It's Friday, March 17th. I am John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, here to talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine. And there's a ton of news today. Let me first get the TikTokers rolling on my iPad over here, and then we will wait a couple minutes for TikTok, YouTube, and everybody else to arrive. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes pretty much to get a critical mass of folks once they're notified we're live. So we will do that. If you want, maybe introduce yourselves, just say where you're from. Nice way to start the show. And as always, if you're watching the recording, zoom ahead 3 minutes because we're going to be hanging out for 3 minutes while we wait for the show to start. Yeah, a lot of news. It's a lot about, not a lot of news. It's a long discussion about the war crime stuff with Putin. So that will take time. So not a lot of news otherwise, actually, but that's a big news story that deserves a lot of discussion. So yay. Anyway, what's going on? I've got my coffee talk, remember, in the morning for TikTok and Discord, 10 a.m. Eastern time, US. I am good, Jahid. How are you? So remember that, folks. Oh, man. I've been watching Borgen, a very good TV show on Netflix. It's old now, I guess, but Danish political show. It's very good. It's very good. So check it out if you got Netflix. Only 3 seasons, but it's very good. All right, guys, we'll wait another minute or so and then we'll get rolling once we get enough folks on here. Hi, England, DBZ. Yes, Scotland. What else is going on? I don't know. Not too much. I don't know. Oh, suddenly I had a long nap, actually. I think it's part of the problem. I had a nap today, so I'm like rested, but in that kind of like, whoa, zone. So hopefully I will be fine. I had some tea to perk me up. Oh, Bolivia. Iyamani. Like my favorite band, Inti Iyamani. Welcome. We don't see a lot of Latin Americans here, usually. Yeah, Borgen, very good TV show. Excuse me. Yes, Den Haag. We're going to be talking about that. That's for sure. El Salvador. Look at us, multiple Latinos today. We tend to get more Europeans. Usually, well, I mean, a lot of Americans, U.S. and then a good amount of Europeans, but not as much Latin America, not as much Africa or Asia for that matter. Australians, but any case. All right, guys, I think I'll get rolling. We've got a decent enough number. It's about 3 minutes. So as I said, welcome. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my weekly show, or actually nightly, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, US, where I talk about the latest news from Ukraine. The way the show works, I just had dinner, so now my allergies are kicking in. The way the show works is first half of the show, I talk about the news, and second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. Feel free. Thank you for the gifts there already on TikTok. Who was that? I can't even see. Oh, Inspired Woman. Thank you for that a lot. So the way this works is, as I said, if you can, well, okay. So basically, submit your questions. You can submit them now if you want, or as I'm talking, and then I will get to them at the second half of the show. Did get my tongue for a second there. Thank you for the gift there. Who was that? Alex. Oh, Alex Diaz. Oh, thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. I think you said El Salvador, I think. So yeah, if you want to submit questions on TikTok, go to the Q&A link in my profile. For you guys on YouTube, etc., use the link at the bottom. And I certainly appreciate your guys' gifts. I do this full time. I've been doing it since the war broke out. Every day originally, now 5 days a week, and then doing the news throughout the day on TikTok. So if you can, I appreciate the gifts on TikTok, like the leprechaun that somebody just put up. Who was that? Lady Galpin. Thank you. And Andrew for the hat and the mustache, or your super chat questions, etc. on TikTok, on YouTube, I mean. So thank you guys. All right, let's get rolling. So it's day 384 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation. Don't forget that tomorrow morning, I've got my coffee talk I do, where we will be having a special chat, just hanging out in the morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, US, on TikTok with the paid subscribers on TikTok, and with the new, now we finally figured it out with the help of Syndicate, the paid $5 and up subscribers on Discord. All of you and the mods, of course, are welcome to join us. So please do. Thank you, Dr. Shane, for that 10 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning for the paid subscribers, $5 and up. All right, guys, so let's get rolling on this. So very interesting. Thank you, Gator Girl, for the one. Today's big news, obviously, is Vladimir Putin getting hit with the arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court in The Hague. This is the court. I mean, this is the international court that goes after war criminals. They go after, Nazis, genocide. I mean, the big stuff here. And they issued an arrest warrant today for Vladimir Putin and another woman, his deputy in charge of basically kidnapping the children in Ukraine and bringing them to Russia. Now, let me read you a little bit about this. There's, by the way, one thing we knew, thank you for the March gift there, Pauline. We knew earlier this week that the criminal court was looking at issuing arrest warrants soon, and we knew the original two issues. Mind you, there's other issues they may find war crimes, crimes against humanity, even genocide about. But at least initially, they were looking at one, the kidnapping of Ukrainian children, bringing them to Russia and turning them into Russians, which is hell of a war crime there. And two, the targeting of civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, specifically the electrical infrastructure, which is a war crime as well. But again, only the beginning of this. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Percivillan. That was a lot of the leprechauns there. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. That was very generous of you. Thank you. So head of the criminal court, listen to this today. The court in a statement said that the Russian president is allegedly responsible for the war crime of unlawful deportation of population, children, and that of unlawful transfer of population, children, from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. It also issued a warrant for the arrest for Maria Alexeyevna Lvova-Belova, Russia's commissioner for children's rights, on similar allegations. Thank you, Phoenix, for that. Lvova-Belova is, according to the Washington Post, listen to this, the woman who runs his program to kidnap and then re-educate the Ukrainian kids to turn them into Russians. And then what they do is they take these kids and then give them to Russian families, like as orphans for adoption. Actually, I'm going to explain a little bit more. I mean, actually, I've got a really good New York Times article I'm going to quote to you guys in a bit, walking you through what they followed, like one or two kids' cases to show you what the Russians did. But basically, the Russians invade, okay? They obviously are destroying these towns they're coming into. And what they did was they took children that they found unaccompanied by adults. Some of these kids, the parents might be dead. Some of these kids, the parents might just be missing, right? I mean, it's wartime. You're running for your building's getting bombed. You run for cover. Who knows? They took these kids, and rather than turning them over to the Ukrainian authorities, they took these kids, brought them to Russia, and then put them, first of all, in a re-education camp to like train them to be Russians, and then gave them to Russian families for adoption, where they will then be forced to get Russian citizenship in about a year and turned into Russian citizens. I mean, horrific what the Russians did. Some of these kids did, in fact, lose their parents. Other ones have relatives that are still trying to find them and get them, and the Russians are refusing to return them. It is absolutely sickening what the Russians have done here. Thank you, Alan. Thank you so much for that, Alan. That was super generous. Thank you. It is sickening what the Russians have done here. It is a war crime. If, in fact, the kids didn't have parents, and I'm trying to think, I think it might have been Sky, at least Sky News reported on it. I'm not sure who got it originally, but there's video I just watched before the show of Russian troops going into an orphanage in one of these towns. It was in Kherson, actually. The town of Kherson. Thank you, Phoenix, for that. Kherson is Ukrainian town all the way over here, recently liberated. A few months ago was liberated from the Russians, okay? The Russians had taken it at the beginning of the war, liberated. What they found was the security video, and I'm watching the security video, you see it. The Russian troops go through the orphanage, and they're looking for children. Now, they aren't finding any because the head of the school, the head of the orphanage, had heard that the Russians were doing just this. He was interviewed by the news, and he says, we heard that the Russians were coming and stealing children. So we took the children, and I forget how many, they had like a couple hundred kids. They distributed them among the families in the city of Kherson. And each Ukrainian family took 2 or 3 kids and pretended they were their kids, right? So that the Russian troops wouldn't know when they came in. Now, very dangerous. I mean, this is just like with the Nazis in World War II, with the French being occupied. I know stories from French families I've talked to where, if they find out you're doing this, your entire family could be killed. So really courageous of the families in Kherson. Basically, they got away with it. The Russians didn't find anybody, but then they took the files from the school, the files about the children, because they wanted the children. I mean, absolutely sickening what these guys did. Now, the woman who's in charge of the program for Putin, her name is, as I said, Alexeyevna Lvova Belova. Lvova Belova, her last name is hyphenated, is, according to the Washington Post, a religiously devout mother of 22 children. Okay, she's the mother of 22 children. I'm sorry. You know what? That is so screwy. That's just screwy. Who openly, listen to this, she's a religiously devout mother of 22 children who openly advocates stripping children of their Ukrainian identities. Now, the New York Times adds that the forced transfer of children, when intended to destroy a national group, is also an act of genocide under international law. So, in other words, when you're taking these kids to kidnap them, that's one crime. Okay, that is a war crime. It becomes genocide when you're doing it as part of a coordinated program to basically eliminate the entire country. Okay, so if the Russians, if they could prove that the Russians were doing this because they were literally trying to eliminate the Ukrainian identity by taking Ukrainian children and making them Russians, that would be genocide. I had read earlier today, the problem with that is it's a much higher burden of proof, or maybe not burden of proof, but you need a lot of evidence to prove that. And it's not clear that the investigators, at least at this point, that they have that level of evidence. The International Criminal Court does not recognize immunity for states, for heads of state, meaning presidents, prime ministers, etc., because generally, a head of state is going to be immune from getting prosecuted in most countries. And it's kind of the way you want it in a way, because, we don't want our president arrested when he goes abroad. You don't want your prime minister arrested when they go abroad. But that is exempt in the case of the International Criminal Court. They can go after anybody. It is exempt. So listen to this. The ICC the International Criminal Court does not recognize immunity for heads of state in cases involving war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. And it's nearly unprecedented to issue an arrest warrant for a sitting president, which is interesting. Now, having said that, so with Putin, right, because he's a sitting president, they did issue an arrest warrant for the former Sudanese president Omar al-Bashir while he was in power, but that's the only one anybody could point to as recent. So it's also rather, I don't want to say gutsy, but rather novel that they went after Putin as a sitting president. Oh, and going after him while the war is going on, which is also very interesting. No, exactly, Octavio. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Territorial dispute. Now, keep in mind, what's interesting with this too is, and by the way, yes, the trolls, I know somebody's on TikTok saying the trolls are going to be out. This is I'm going to get to this in a minute. This is a very bad day for Russia. I will tell you right now, there's a lot of news and a lot of analysis, I think, and a lot of I'm very interested in this topic, but I think it's also very newsworthy, so to speak. So we are going to be talking about this a lot tonight. So just be aware. This, as I even rewrote sort of the title of the broadcast for YouTube, et cetera, and for you guys on TikTok, we are going to talk a lot about this because this is really a big story. The UN yesterday released a report accusing Russia of war crimes, outright accused them of war crimes, and said it is possible that Russia also committed crimes against humanity. It included, among other things, the kidnapping of children, this very issue that Putin is now accused of. According to one estimate I saw, mind you, we are talking about the proof people have. We don't know how many children the Russians have done this with. Early on in the war, months ago, the Russians admitted that they had over 200,000 Ukrainian children that they were protecting as refugees. Who knows how many the Russians actually have? Because part of the problem here is you're dealing with a child. If it's a baby, forget it. Right? Baby doesn't know anything. Even young children are going to forget after a while. Thank you for the gift there, Darlene. The New York Times article, which I'm going to read to you in a second, was interesting because they were interviewing one young girl, and basically she knew her mother's phone number. But she lost it. She didn't even know it. She had her mother's phone number on a piece of paper because mom lived somewhere else because mom was unemployed and this kind of thing. But she had the phone number in case of trouble to call mom. She lost the piece of paper, so she had no idea who her mother was. I mean, these are the kind of kids we're dealing with. So basically, we don't know how many children this impacts. We do know that it's at least 6,000 to 16,000 children that the Russians have stolen, and that they are basically trying to convert into becoming Russian citizens. It obviously could be a lot more. Now, in a second, I'm going to read you some paragraphs from a New York Times story from several years ago that I pulled up right before the show. I'm sorry, not several years ago, from several months ago. It might have been last October or November. And they looked into the specific cases of a couple different children. And I want to read it to you because it really gives you the flavor of exactly what the Russians are doing. And just how, I mean, on its face, I probably don't need to explain to you the idea, right? When you invade a country, actually, it's important to make this point, actually. The Russians keep saying, we saved these children. These were children without parents. We saved them. Well, okay, some of the kids don't have parents because you came in and murdered their parents, okay? So, I'm not having a lot of sympathy for your argument that, well, the kids didn't have parents. Of course we had to take them. You killed their parents, and you killed their parents in an illegal war. Thank you, Teresa, for the hat and mustache. Secondly, the Russians went through orphanages specifically to take children. They were in orphanages. They were doing fine. In Kherson, it was an orphanage. They didn't need to go in and take the kids, right? It was an orphanage. The guy was running the orphanage. The kids were fine. They wanted to take them anyway. What's the other argument I was going to make with this? But they killed the parents. I know what it is too. Third point. What about prisoner exchanges? I bring this up because we know that there have been multiple prisoner exchanges since the beginning of the war. The Ukrainians and the Russians exchange, right? Ukrainians have a bunch of Russians. Russians have a bunch of Ukrainians. And thank you, Scuba Steve, for the hat and mustache. And they exchange them, right? They peacefully get together. They walk across a bridge like we used to do with the Soviets in the old days. We'd have like our spy and their spy cross the bridge to each other. It's done. It's not very difficult. The Russians could have done this with the children too. Let's pretend the Russians are telling the truth. Let's pretend they actually found children who were crying in the rain and the rubble and didn't have parents, didn't have family, didn't have anything. Some poor kid buried under the rubble, and you picked him up and said, oh my God, we're saving this child. And the child says, I have no parents. Your option is one, give him to a Ukrainian. Two, if you've got to take the kid because literally he'll die, you then arrange to swap the kid with the Ukrainians, right? You're arranging to swap the soldiers. I mean, you can exchange a Ukrainian prisoner of war. You can certainly exchange a Ukrainian baby too. But what do the Russians do? They pick option three. Oh, well, parents are gone. We found a kid, finders keepers, as if they found a shell from a bullet as a souvenir. They found a baby and said, hey, we got a souvenir. Let's take it. I mean, it reminds me of, I've been watching a lot of TV shows about the Vikings, the Greeks, my people, the Romans. I mean, these sort of, actually Native Americans as well, kind of going in and sort of as spoils of war, you just take the wives and children, as yours. Babies, children are not trophies. They're not souvenirs. And that's the whole issue here. And that's why it's so just disgusting. Okay, I'm going to read the New York Times story to you in a second. It's really gross. I mean, it's not really gross. It's really important. It's very disturbing, but I think it's really important. And they did a great job. Thank you, 978, for the wand there. They did a really good job looking at a couple of the kids and basically showing the anatomy of how the Russians did this. Thank you, Jesse James. I wanted to tell you really quick about my Discord community. As I said, I do this for free. I've been doing it almost every day since the war started. Initially, for the first several months, literally 7 days a week, I was doing these updates, and then I lost my voice. So I finally thought, you know what, maybe I'd take the weekend off. But I'm not taking the weekend off entirely. As I said, tomorrow morning, we'll be doing a hangout. Thank you, Tom Clark, for that. We'll be doing a hangout with, and thank you, Teresa, for the hand wave. We'll be doing a hangout with the TikTok subscribers and the paid subscribers, and the Discord paid VIP members as well. My Discord, for example, thank you, Teresa. My Discord, we've got a lot of cool things going on there. Thank you, Annie. You can find the link in my profile on TikTok. You can also find it with aravosis.com. But basically, it's a community where we hang out and chat. It's a lot of fun if you know Discord. If you don't, check it out. But one of the cool things we do on the Discord is, thank you, 978, we hold auctions. of cool stuff we've gotten from Ukraine. And half the money from the auction, half the profit from the auction channels back into Ukraine. We've bought drones for the Russians, not for the Russians. We've bought drones for the Ukrainian troops. We've bought camouflage nets that we've helped them to hide their machinery. We've bought, we've helped buy gifts for children at Christmas. I mean, we've done a lot of humanitarian, but also helping the military stuff. I just wanted to show you really quick. So a couple of the different things we've got and the other half of the money is to support my work because I'm doing this full time and for free, and nobody's paying me other than you guys. So it helps pay my bills and helps me keep doing this. Let me just show you a couple of the things we've got that we're auctioning. So the first one, which is funny because I wasn't sure anybody would like these, and people love this, which I'm very happy. Fridge magnets. We got refrigerator magnets, assuming the Russians haven't stolen your refrigerator. This one is of the famous Ukrainian stamp and photo painting of Russian warship Go F Yourself, right? The Ukrainian soldier is holding his middle finger up to the Russian warship, the Moskva. The Russian warship, the Moskva, it's a fridge magnet, is the ship that went to Snake Island. And remember at the beginning of the war, the Russian ship went to the island and said, Ukrainian soldiers, turn yourselves in or we will kill you. And the Ukrainian commander got on the radio, and we've got the recording. We've got the whole world heard the recording. Ukrainian commander gets on the radio and says, Russian warship, go F yourself. Well, they ended up getting taken captive. We thought they were dead. They ended up getting taken captive. I think some of them did die, but the rest, I believe, have been freed. But that became this iconic, I mean, I got chills even telling you now, right? Just sort of the Ukrainian spirit was just, encapsulated in that story. Well, just to make it better, what did the Ukrainians do a few months later? They developed their own cruise missile and blew up the Moskva and sank it. It was the number one Russian ship for the war. Their number one ship, the Ukrainians sank with a missile they developed themselves. Amazing. Thank you, 978. So that's what that's commemorating. The other thing, we're auctioning a lot of stuff, but the other stuff I'm auctioning right now, really cool first day stamp, and it's stamped first day, a commemorative stamp from Ukraine, from the post office, that is of honoring the Ukrainian farmers who have been helping tow the Russian tanks. Remember at the beginning of the war, those first few months, we kept seeing videos of the Russians would abandon their tanks or get killed, and the Ukrainian farmers would then tow the tank away. And it was the cutest thing, seeing this little tractor with this big Russian tank, and then they'd give it to the Ukrainian troops and they'd use it again. So this is first day of issue, and it's stamped at the bottom. It says, good evening. The stamp and the postage stamp and the stamp, the die that goes on it, both say, good evening, we are from Ukraine. So those are really cool. And the final thing, I've got more of them, are the really, really, really super cool Azovstal steel bracelets. I will get to the news after this, but this one's totally cool, and I'm very proud of it too because I was able to get a few more. These are bracelets made from steel, the last batch of steel from the Azovstal plant in Mariupol. Mariupol is a Ukrainian city, southeastern Ukraine, right down here. This is the city the Russians just obliterated in the first several months of the war. I'd say like the first 6 months. This is the city where the Russians blew up the cinema, the drama theater that had the word children written on the side so that the Russian bombers would know children were seeking refuge inside. It had the word children. The Russians blew it up anyway. Okay. That's what this is. Now, this is also the city, and this is where the bracelet comes in. The bracelet is commemorating the 2,000 Ukrainian troops that fought the 14,000 Russian troops for 2 months. Remember, the Ukrainians were holed up in the Azovstal steel plant. So in order to honor them, the Ukrainians took the steel from the plant and made a bracelet. Now, this one in particular, and this is the last one I've got of this kind, is particularly cool because this batch, the Ukrainians took the steel, they put a big monument. I forgot, they wrote these words on the monument. I'm forgetting what it was, but these super tall words honoring the troops, and they had it in downtown Kyiv. They then decided, let's make them into bracelets. So this bracelet was part of a huge steel display in downtown Kyiv that was from the last batch of steel from the steel plant the Ukrainians were defending. Anyway, it's really cool. You can see it's got the Ukrainian trident. I don't know if you can see on TikTok as well, but you see the Ukrainian trident there. It says from Azovstal. You guys can see it much better. There it is. And it's made by the Ukrainian government. They don't sell them anymore. They're all sold out for good. So anyway, thus my Discord. Do check it out. It's very cool and love it. So here we go. Walker, I couldn't care less. So grow up or don't come back. Sorry, we've got somebody being a little pronunciation nanny on TikTok. Don't ban him, but he's being a jerk. So don't be a jerk, Walker. Stephen Marco is saying on YouTube, YouTube question, I think NATO's response to the U.S. drone should be filling the Black Sea with ships, protecting grain, and blocking Russian ships from shooting at Ukraine. You know, I will say this. Steven's asking about the drone situation, which we'll talk a little bit about the end, but I always promise if someone buys a super chat question, I will address it immediately because you guys are contributing and I very much appreciate it. So, situation with the drone, my issue is the Russians were clearly trying to get in our face. They attacked an American plane, in essence, a drone. Sure, there wasn't anybody on board, but it doesn't matter. Oh, we have a crazy Russian troll on Facebook. Bye, crazy Russian troll on Facebook. Bye-bye. Sorry, we had somebody, Joe Biden's false flags in Ukraine. It was like, oh, the Rush Limbaugh, not the Rush Limbaughs. That'd be more like, what's his face, Lyndon LaRouche kind of people. So we're talking about the drone. So the drone situation, what I worry about is, I'm assuming you guys all know what we're talking about. The NATO was flying, or U.S. was flying a drone, international airspace, totally legal. It's the same airspace that planes would fly in if the war wasn't going on, totally legal. And the Russians knocked it out of the sky, literally knocked it out of the sky. It is an act of war. I mean, the U.S. doesn't want to say that because we don't want it to escalate, but it's an act of war, okay? I mean, it was international airspace, total act of war. The U.S. doesn't want to escalate, so Biden's kind of trying to let it go. And what worries me with this is, I think, I said the other day, I think Biden has an opportunity, but also a risk here. The opportunity is a lot of Republicans are really pissed at the Russians for doing this. When you watch the video, as an American, I watched that video of the Russians kind of attacking our drone, and it pissed me off. I felt like, I see Julius, I'm going to get to you in a second, trust me. I see the Russians doing that, and as an American, it infuriates me. I think you run the risk. Thank you. Alumez on TikTok is saying it makes Biden look weak. I think Biden runs the risk of looking weak by not responding more strongly. Now, that doesn't mean you declare nuclear war, right? Thank you, Teresa, for the confetti. It doesn't mean you drop nukes on Moscow. It doesn't mean we sink a Russian ship. But I think they're testing. Yeah, Ant the Blant on TikTok. They're testing our boundaries. Exactly. I feel like the Russians are testing us. We know with Putin that this is what Putin does. Putin does something outrageous, and if you don't respond, he then ups the ante and does it even more outrageous next time. He just keeps testing and testing and testing and going higher and higher. And I worry about that. Now, one of the things I think Elise had said the other day, one of our folks over on YouTube, and I totally agree with her, you don't have to bomb the Russians in response. What you can do is make the Russians pay a price. I mean, I think, Stephen Marco was saying, for example, maybe we do put some ships in the Black Sea. Now, I think the reason we don't have ships in the Black Sea is we want to make sure there isn't any sort of interplay between NATO ships and Russian ships, that something goes wrong and war breaks out, right? So that's probably why. What I would do that's safer, I'd give Ukraine some of the weapons they want that we're not giving them yet, right? If Russia does something outrageous like this, we say, you know what? We're giving Ukraine the 200-mile, 300-kilometer range missiles that we weren't giving them before, the ATACMS, because we were afraid of angering you. But you know what? Oh, by the way, we were afraid of escalating. But you know what, Boris? You just escalated, right? Vladimir Putin, you just escalated. Every time you escalate over there in Russia, we are going to escalate ourselves and give Ukraine better weapons. That's an answer you can do. And I think it would placate the domestic critics. And by the way, hey, we're a democracy. I mean, I'm not saying you make war plans solely based on politics, but politics matters. You need to continue support for the war in your own country, or we can't keep supporting the war. So obviously politics matters in that regard. I think it's smart anyway to give Ukraine these weapons, but I think Biden could really shore up the Republican support. Thank you for that, Chesek. Shore up the Republican support, and at the same time, sort of short circuit some of the critics at the same time. Any case, I'm with you there. So what was this insanely generous contribution here? I'm going back to, I think it was Julius. Julius, okay, that may be the, okay, you're tied with the most, I think, because we also had, oh, I'm forgetting now, one of you that gave a super large donation for something several months ago, and I'm totally spacing out who it was. That was insane, Julius. Thank you for that. Julius is asking on YouTube a few months back. Oops, sorry. And thank you. Who was that? Teresa for the wand. Thank you. A few months back, I joked that the Russian plan seemed to keep throwing bodies at Ukraine until the Ukrainians ran out of bullets. I never actually thought that was their actual military strategy, but it seems to be the case. That's insane. Yes. What has been interesting with this, so first of all, mostly, we've been seeing that mostly with Bakhmut. Okay. Bakhmut, and I'm going to go back to the children's thing in a minute, but as I said, anybody who pays for questions on YouTube, we get to them because that's a contribution to my work, and I very much appreciate it. So Bakhmut, Ukrainian town, more or less here at the tip of my pen, eastern Ukraine, right on the border between, oops, go a little higher, right on the border between Ukraine, between the Ukrainian troops and the Russian troops, okay? The Russians have been trying to get it for 9 months. The Russians have been throwing men nonstop at this crazy town. They've been doing it in some other areas too, but nonstop here. They do Vuhledar as well, which I think I talked about yesterday. But Bakhmut's been particularly bad, and the Russians have been getting slaughtered. The Russians have been getting killed to such a degree that the reports out of there have been that literally the bodies were piling up in the field. The Russians also are notorious for not going and getting their dead. U.S., we do. I'm assuming NATO in general, we go and get our dead. Even though you're dead, you're still an American soldier. We go and get you, right? The Russians, when you're dead, you're dead. I mean, they don't care when you're alive, but when you're dead, you're dead. They don't care. So the bodies were literally piling up in the fields, and the Russians just kept sending people over and over and over. And I'm talking running in an open field, basically, to try to take what you can. You get mowed down, and then the next guy goes even further. And also, they're using you knowing you're going to get killed. They would send their own men, knowing they're going to get killed, to basically show where the Ukrainians are hiding. So think about it this way. 6 or 9 Russians come running at you from a couple hundred feet away. Thank you. Who's that? Henrik for the magic wand. Thank you. Let's say you got 9 or 10 Russians running at you, a couple hundred feet away. You open fire. They all die, but now their comrades know where you are, and then they're able to shoot fire at where you are, whether it's artillery, whatever it is, to try to blow you up. But the thing is, you're literally killing your own troops on purpose. And the Russians keep doing this. The one story I reported yesterday that was really bad is Institute for the Study of War now believes that, well, two different things going on, actually two different things. In Bakhmut, the town I just told you, the Russian government got so ticked off at Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's the rich Russian oligarch. Thank you, Elle, for the hearts there. And who's at Life is Amazing for the guitar. The Russian government got so pissed at this Russian billionaire who is running this mercenary group called Wagner. The Wagner soldiers for hire are fighting in Ukraine as for the Russians, as are the regular Russian troops. They've been competing with each other. The guy running Wagner has been a real arrogant jerk. And he seems like he's trying to take on Putin politically. So Putin finally got fed up with him, cut off the guy's ammunition, 80% of his ammunition about a month ago. And then, this is the best part, started sending more and more of this guy's troops. These are Russians. They're Russian soldiers for hire, but they're Russians. And they're fighting like on Russia's side in the war. So you'd think at least Putin would want to protect them because they're helping him. Putin's people are sending these Wagner guys to keep fighting in Bakhmut, even though they don't have enough ammunition, knowing they're going to get killed because he's trying to kill these troops so that the guy Prigozhin he doesn't like, who runs it, won't have any more troops. Because if he doesn't have troops, he loses his power, right? Think about it. In a dictatorship, you've got your own troops, 50, 100,000 of them. That gives you some power. If all your troops die in the Battle of Bakhmut, oh well, you lose your power. They have been literally trying to kill Russian soldiers as part of a pissing match between Putin and this guy. Well, then, yesterday, Institute for the Study of War announces that they believe the same thing is happening in Vuhledar. Vuhledar is another Ukrainian town, more or less around here. I'm going to go more or less. So southwest of Donetsk, so around here. Again, it's on the front between Ukraine and Russia. It's in Ukraine, of course, but the front between Russia's troops and Ukraine's troops. And the Russians got slaughtered. The Russians have been coming for like 3 months, totally slaughtered by the Ukrainians, thousands of deaths, really bad. The Russian Ministry of Defense keeps sending more Russian troops to be slaughtered again and again and again. Why? Because they were embarrassed by that billionaire I told you about, who actually did have some good battles up until now. They were embarrassed by him, and they want their victory so they can show off how good their own Russian troops are, their own public Russian troops, right? The Russian army is versus this private Russian army. So they're sending their soldiers into sure death. And mind you, it's been death for 3 months in this town, into a sure death because of, again, a pissing match between the Russian Ministry of Defense and this guy. So I bring it back because you were talking about, Julius, about sending these soldiers in, these Russians just in to be shot at and killed. And that is what the Russians are doing. Now, to some degree, too, they probably are trying to have the Russians, have the Ukrainians run out of ammunition, right? But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Okay, Julius, that was insane. Thank you for that. I just can't believe you did that. Thank you. Let me jump back to the New York Times. So back to our big story of the day here. The big story here is we're talking about Putin getting indicted for war crimes. And I was going to read you a New York Times story from a few months ago that tells us a little more about how the Russians go about basically kidnapping these children. Remember, he got indicted for war crimes because the Russians have been kidnapping Ukrainian children and then converting them into Ukrainians through special education camps. I mean, that's how screwy this is. Thank you, Stephen, for the March thing. So listen to this. So the New York Times reported on several specific cases last fall. I'm going to read you. This is all from the Times. When Mariupol was being bombed, Mariupol, as we said, arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. We're talking about the fact that the International Criminal Court today issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for war crimes in Ukraine. So Mariupol, the Ukrainian town down here that the Russians have been occupying for a while now, when Mariupol was being bombed, the Russians the citizens of Mariupol, including children, headed west with their neighbors to go to free Ukrainian territory. So basically, Mariupol is under attack. And at this point, let's say this part of Ukraine is still free. It's not occupied by the Russians yet. So the citizens of Mariupol are going west, trying to go over to free Ukraine where they can get away from the Russian bombing. Okay. The Russians intercepted them, put them on buses. This includes children, put them on buses and forced them to go to Russia instead of going to Ukraine. Okay. Which is a war crime. I didn't want to go, said Anya, 14, who escaped a home for tuberculosis patients in Mariupol and is now with a foster family near Moscow. This is a New York Times story I'm reading. But nobody asked me. In the rush to flee, she said, she left behind a sketchbook containing her mother's phone number. All she could remember were the first 3 digits. Some of the kids came from orphanages. Though that's still illegal, others have relatives. Oh, I'm sorry. It's still illegal if they're from orphanages, is what I'm telling you. Others have relatives who want them back, and the Russians are refusing. A shy girl, this is all about this girl, Anya, okay? How old did I say? 14-year-old girl who the Russians stole. A shy girl with a passion for drawing. She said that her Russian foster family treated her well, but that she ached to return to Ukraine. Soon, though, she said she would become a Russian citizen. They're making her become a Russian citizen. Quote, I don't want to become a Russian citizen, she said. My friends and family aren't here. According to the New York Times, Russian officials have made clear that their goal is to replace any childhood attachment to home with a love for Russia. I mean, folks, this is like Stalinist crazy stuff, what I'm reading to you right now. I mean, this is insane. This is why I'm reading this story from the Times. This is from a couple months ago. It's crazy. Russia's Commissioner for Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, has organized the transfers and said that she herself adopted a teenager from Mariupol. Listen to this. Ms. Lvova-Belova, who was under Western sanctions, said the boy she adopted from Mariupol, a Ukrainian kid she stole, she said the boy had been homesick at first and even attended a demonstration supporting Ukraine. Quote, he was yearning for the house in which he grew up, friends, and his dear Mariupol, she wrote on social media. But the children soon come to appreciate their new home, she said. Listen to this woman's story. Hang on a second. Oh God! Oh, listen. Listen to this one. Those were my notes. Listen to this woman. Here's a second woman who's been adopting Ukrainian children in the Russian Far East. Listen to this woman from the New York Times story. In the Siberian city of Salakard, along the Arctic Circle, Olga Druzhinina said she adopted 4 children aged 6 to 17 from the Ukrainian city of Donetsk, more than 1,600 miles away. So Donetsk is this city right here that actually the Ukrainians and the Russians are sort of keep fighting over. They get 4 kids aged 6 to 17, kidnap them, and mind you, they don't just go across the border, they move them to the Russian Far East. Now, just to remind you guys, Russia has 11 time zones. The Russian Far East is thousands of miles. Hold on a second. Let me see this. What's the name of the town here? Salakard? I'm not sure when you're able to find that. Hey, Google, how many miles is it from the Russian city of Salakard to Kyiv, Ukraine?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Shoot. Hey, let's see if we can. I don't know whether Siberia is going to be a little hard. Hey, Google, how far is it from Siberia to Kyiv, Ukraine?
Ukraine is 4,362 kilometers from Siberia as the crow flies.
4,300 kilometers, which means about 3,000 miles. Now I'm being general here because it's saying Siberia in general. 3,000 miles, guys. It's Vladivostok? It's near Vladivostok? That's where it's near? Yeah, 4,000 kilometers, 3,000 miles, people. Okay? That's how far this garbage is. Oh, Rachel, thank you. It boggles my mind. Hang on a second. Another question from Rachel. Oops. Super trying to find I put my glasses down and now, well, if I don't find my glasses, oops. Oh, here they are. Do you think Prigozhin may be trying to capitalize on the arrest warrant, by either trying to turn Putin over, using the media to turn Russians against Putin, saying, I wouldn't get a warrant? I did not see if Prigozhin had any reaction to it. Prigozhin is the billionaire running this mercenary group that seems to be out for Putin's job. I will say this. If I were Putin, I'd be worried about Prigozhin. He's exactly the kind of guy who could try to turn Putin in. The problem is, and we'll talk about this later, you actually have to get it's not easy grabbing Vladimir Putin and deporting him to the Hague, right? That's not an easy thing to do. So even if Prigozhin decides to sort of turn on Putin, I'm not sure how he actually grabs him and how he actually deports him. You know what I mean? Or extradites him. That's the not easy part. Okay, so listen to this. We're talking. So this woman in the Russian Far East, from the Ukrainian city, Russia recently illegally annexed the Donetsk region. We know this. Oh, so the woman's talking about the 4 Ukrainian children she adopted. Our family is like listen to this. Our family is like a small Russia, Mrs. Druzhinina said in an interview. Russia took in 4 Ukrainian territories, and the Druzhinin family took in 4 Ukrainian children. She said she was awaiting a 5th child and considered the children fully Russian. Quote, we are not taking what is not ours. How about that quote at the end? We are not taking what isn't already ours. She says, this is already Russia. So these children are already Russian, so we're allowed to take the children. There's more. Oh, there's more. Thank you. Who's that? Evolving with the lights there. And I missed one. Imagine, Lola. Thank you, Lola, for the wand. I did see that. I wasn't sure who that was. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely sickening. Okay. Patreon. I'll tell you about my Patreon really quick, and then we're going to talk about what's next. What are the I wanted to at least set the scene of what this was and how horrible it is. Now we're going to talk about what does this mean? What can be done? Can anything be done about it? Right, that kind of stuff. So hang on a second, just scrolling down. So I'll tell you first, I do have a Patreon as well. Please check out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Aravosis. You guys can find it in my profile on TikTok and the links. The rest of you on YouTube, etc. It's right at the bottom of the page there. You see patreon.com. It's my Patreon page. It's basically a way of helping creators by giving them a donation every month, and it's automatic until you decide to cut it off. $5, $10, $25, whatever. But it's a nice way as a creator of knowing how much money's coming in each month. And again, I do this full time. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out. No one is paying me other than you guys. So you literally make it possible for me to do that. So that's great. Thank you for the gift there. Who was that? Big Gator girl. No, the New York Times is a very good newspaper, Michael. That's not true. So let's go back to the news here. So what's next? There are about 15 outstanding warrants that the ICC has issued that have not gone anywhere. Thank you, Mr. Chicago, for the March thing. So basically, there are many, but not that many. So 15 important people accused of war crimes that, that they haven't caught yet, basically, okay? Thank you for the heart there, Boat Drink. None of the outstanding warrants are of Putin's stature. This is the most significant person they've ever gone after, the most significant head of state they've gone after. I don't think Pinochet and Milosevic even compare to this, right? Chile and Serbia. Thank you, Mr. Chicago, for that, and Chase for the superpower. The 120. Oh, I was going to tell you really quick. 123 countries are parties to the International Criminal Court, which means they recognize it. Okay, and they would be, in principle, willing to extradite and arrest criminals to send there. I will say really quick, Russia's not a party. America is not a party, interestingly enough. India is not a party, another important country, which will be relevant in a second. Now, how does this impact Putin? Well, okay. First, you got to get your hands on him. Not easy to get your hands on him, right? He would have to he'd have to be overthrown, and whoever took over his country decided, hey, we want to make things better and turn Putin over to the International Criminal Court. They will not hold a trial in absentia, meaning they will not hold a trial if they don't have the accused there for the trial. That's the first problem. Putin would have to go to a country that is a party to the Rome Treaty, as it's called, I guess, for the International Criminal Court, and that country would have to agree, basically be willing to arrest him. Now, that's a big deal, Putin getting arrested. What is good is this at least really complicates Putin's travel. He's never going to the West ever. For the rest of Putin's life, he's never visiting the West ever again. He's going to have a very hard time visiting Europe. He's going to have an impossible time visiting America. This causes real problems for the United Nations. The United Nations is in New York City. Typically, we let any lunatic head of state go because the United Nations General Assembly meets each September and all the heads of state come. Putin is one of them who comes. I don't think you can let a war criminal in because honestly, we'd almost be compelled to grab. Well, we wouldn't because we're not a party to the convention. But I still don't. There's the rub. We're not a party to the convention, so we would not be required to arrest him to turn him over. But I think, bottom line is, this adds a wrinkle that makes it very difficult for Putin to travel in, at least 70 countries. But most of those 70 countries are places he wouldn't go to anyway. Most of Europe are signatories. He's in danger there. Much of Africa, signatories. U.S., not so much. The BRICS. So Putin is going to the BRICS summit in August. This is the summit of this small group of countries, basically sort of large developing countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's being held in South Africa in August. South Africa is a signatory to the treaty. The problem is South Africa already went through this in 2015. The Sudanese president, who has also been issued an arrest warrant, was issued for him for war crimes. The South Africans refused to arrest him. So, concern would be, would they do it again? Would they basically refuse this time too? Now, I will say, it certainly makes it more embarrassing for the South Africans if Putin shows up. It certainly makes it more embarrassing for the Russians, or not for the Russians, for the Chinese. Putin next week is meeting with the Chinese premier, who is going to Russia for a summit. I believe he's going to be there on Monday. China, here's the thing. China, like Russia, cares a lot about appearances. China probably isn't thrilled that this came out today on a Friday when Monday their leader is going to be there, just because now the visit is going to be marred by discussions about them meeting with, Putin, who was just indicted basically as a war criminal. It makes it complicated, I think. Even though it's not going to turn China off, it's not going to turn them off. It still makes it uncomfortable, which is useful. 6evo is saying, or whatever, or Bevo, how does Russia, Putin react to war crime warrants? So Russia has already responded by saying, we don't care. We don't recognize the court. Thank you, Kanausi. They don't recognize the court. They said, we don't recognize it. This is garbage. One Russian official said it's toilet paper. We know what to do with it. The Russians say it doesn't matter to them, and they're laughing it off. My next point I was going to make, and this is perfect, is Putin is embarrassed on the world stage. One thing that I think is really interesting is the degree to which Russia really, really, really wants to be part of the big boy club, right? Russia wants to be accepted as an equal to the United States, to Europe, to China, right? I mean, you've got China still developing, but China clearly a very important country, right? Hugely important on the horizon with their economy, with their growing military strength, their growing nuclear weapon strength. I mean, right? China is there. China's there, right? America, clearly world leader. A lot of other countries, I mean, the European countries are no longer superpowers, but they're very big powers, very powerful economic, culturally, militarily, right? Putin, he's got nukes. His military, not so good, we now know. Culturally, no. The Russians have a lot of culture, go back 100 years, sure. But right now, culturally, is Russia the country people are trying to break down the border to get into? No, that's America. 2 million people a year try to cross illegally into America. You know what they do in Russia? 1 million people tried to leave Russia last year. Men fled the country to avoid this crazy war. People around the world don't pine to go to Russia. They pine to go to America. They pine to go to Europe, right? The Russians terribly want to be accepted as an equal. I also think this is part of the reason the Russians are always attacking the UK. There's this weird love-hate thing they've got with the UK and with America too. And these attacks are it's almost meant to put them on the same level as us. And the funny part is, I think not the funny, the sad part is, we don't consider Russia an equal. They consider us an equal, I guess. We don't consider them an equal. Economically, certainly not. Culturally, no way. Militarily, maybe we thought they were close. Now we sure as hell don't. We certainly don't. If we thought they were close, we certainly don't think that now. So I think they desperately, ironically, as much as they criticize the West, I think they criticize the West in our culture because they know ours is the dominant culture internationally with movies and everything else. They're jealous. This does not help. This is, the International Criminal Court and the United Nations the day before said absolutely positively they found war crimes. Russia committed war crimes in Ukraine, according to a United Nations report issued yesterday, okay? Today, we've got the International Criminal Court, an independent body that said the Russians have committed war crimes, possible crimes against humanity, and Vladimir Putin needs to be arrested. That is embarrassing. And that if you're Russian, as much as you sit there and go, we don't care, the reason you're saying we don't care is because you care. You care. A little bit more here. So one of the issues here in terms of the embarrassment, what do world leaders do? You've got India coming up. So exactly, Ben was bringing up India. India is not an ICC signatory, correct. India has not agreed to this either. India, along with Russia and America, don't accept the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction. He says, do you think there's any implications for Putin attending the G20? So the G20 gets interesting. The G20, very big economic meeting of 20 of the world's top economies. It's happening in India this year, okay? What did we say? I don't know when it's happening. Actually, it might be the fall because the last one was like November, whatever. So it's happening in India. India isn't going to arrest Putin, right? Because, India, forget it. India won't even take a firm position on the war, right? Thank you, user, for the hat there. What if this causes problem for Putin on two fronts? One, if he flies out of Russia, he runs the risk of somebody forcing that plane down to arrest him. Now, there's no way we would do it. But if you're Putin and you're paranoid, you got to be worried about this. The International Criminal Court issued the warrant. You've got to be worried about this, right? Because what would Putin do? Putin would be happy to force down a plane to arrest one of us, right? He'd be happy to do that. So in his mind, he'd say, hey, they may force me down. Secondly, India might not arrest him. I don't think India would. Would somebody else send secret forces into India to kidnap Putin and get him out? I mean, again, this is crazy stuff. I don't think we would never do. But from Putin's perspective, he's starting to get worried. The bigger problem for the G20 now is, how does President Biden and the European leaders, among others, show up at the G20 if Putin shows up? He's not just a war criminal. He's basically an indicted war criminal in essence with the arrest warrant. The International Criminal Court has said this guy is an indicted war criminal. You're going to show up at meetings with this guy and sit at the table? You're going to shake hands? You're going to do a group photo with this guy? This causes problems for the G20. It causes problems for any future international group meeting. But guess what it also does? If let's say Putin stays president for another 20 years, he could. How do you ever have summits with Putin, right? Biden had a summit with him. That's never happening again. The European leaders, how are any of our leaders ever going to be able to sit down with this man again because he's an indicted war criminal? I don't think you can. Thank you, Faze Mazer. That's a problem. Now, another problem. How do you negotiate peace with somebody like this? That's a problem too. He's a war criminal. Now, I've been saying this from the beginning, that the war criminal thing makes it hard, because how do you in the end go away? How do you in the end sorry, had to get rid of a troll. Always have to take a quick break to get rid of the trolls. How do you reach a peace deal with this guy? Right? I mean, again, you're going to sit down with him. Zelensky's going to sit down with him. The great powers are going to negotiate an agreement with a war criminal. Putin surely is going to make us somehow agree that we're not going to prosecute him, or that the ICC won't prosecute him, which of course isn't our call. Or at least we will refuse to let our people testify. I don't even know what he could try, but he's clearly going to try to make us not prosecute him and his people. How do we do that? I mean, the International Criminal Court has said this man is a war criminal. That's a hell of a charge. I mean, from them, like I said, these are the people who go after Nazis. This is not just like, a speeding ticket. This is a big deal. How do you reach peace with that? Right? I don't know. I mean, it's really tough. Let me see if I had one more little thing here. How do you negotiate? Yeah, I mean, that's sort of it on that. I've got a couple other little stories I'll give you briefly. As I told you, I knew it was going to go long tonight, so we'll do questions in a second. Let me give you just three other stories that I thought, or three or four that are worth knowing about, just to really boom, boom, boom. And then we'll get into the Q&A, which, I'd like us, if we can, to focus a lot on this topic because it is interesting. Slovakia announced that it too is now sending MiG fighter jets to Ukraine. Yesterday, the Poles announced that they were sending 4 in the next few days and more coming. Slovakia has around 13 of them. They are not able to fly because they haven't been maintained, because Slovakia basically needed Russian mechanics to maintain the planes, because originally they're Russian planes, Soviet planes actually. But we believe now that Slovakia will be turning these planes over to the Ukrainians so they can use them for spare parts. So at least they can use them to get some of their other similar planes up and flying. Turkey has come out and said it will agree to let Finland join NATO. Hungary looks like they're probably coming along as well. Hungary was being a pain, but Turkey was the big holdout for Finland and Sweden. Now they've said, okay, we'll vote. We'll let Finland in. That vote may happen in the next 2 months. We don't know. That's good news. At least they're still playing games with Sweden. China came out today and offered a ceasefire plan, which was insane, for Ukraine, suggesting that both parties, thank you, Kanowski, for the Lock and Key. Great TV show, by the way, Lock and Key. Hey, Jamie, I'll get you guys in a second here. Ceasefire. So China wants a ceasefire. We have to have peace and negotiations, and it should start with a ceasefire between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Here's the problem. Somebody invades my house, kicks me out. I'm trying to get back into my house, and you kick my family, you kill my family. I'm trying to get back into my house. You're in my house with the door closed. I'm trying to get back in, and China comes up and says, you know what? And by the way, I'm slowly getting back in the house. I'm getting enough power to come back in. China says, hey, let's take a break and just freeze things where they are and talk about it. So I'm supposed to freeze the fact that you are in my house, and I'm supposed to stop trying to get in my house. The point here is it does Russia a huge favor doing a ceasefire, because it freezes in place the fact that Russia is controlling 18% of Ukraine's territory. Okay. Russia is controlling all of this. They're occupying all of this in Ukraine, more or less. Russia would like nothing better than for the fighting to stop so that Russia can have more time to build more weapons, to give its troops a chance to relax and, catch up, to train their troops further. So this is it's a bunch of BS. Thank you, D, for the hanging light. It's a bunch of BS asking for that. Finally, Russia is awarding the pilots, giving awards to the pilots that shot down, or that not shot down, but forced down the American drone. So whatever. Jamie, where does China stand with the arrest warrant? Oh, China won't do a thing. China, surprisingly, not surprisingly, is also not a signatory to the International Criminal Court. China won't do it. So they're not required to, but they also wouldn't dare. They wouldn't do a thing. No, China won't do it. Also, China's China. You think China wants the precedent of arresting somebody for war crimes? China would be in a lot of trouble if that was the precedent they were setting up there. Lilia, hello. Lindsey Graham is calling on Biden to designate Russia a state sponsor of terrorism now that there's an arrest warrant for Putin. That's interesting. Bad look for Biden. That's very interesting. Oh, I know I was going to tell you. That brings up a point I was going to raise. Biden clearly is worried about, I think, Biden is worried about all of this impacting how well he's able to sort of broker a peace in the end, right? That if you demonize Russia, if you call him a war criminal, although we kind of did, if you declare Russia a state sponsor of terror, how do you walk it back, right? Like we said, how do you negotiate? How do you reach a deal? But how do you also walk it back in the end? Like you basically would push people into such corners by us. Thank you, Elle, for that. By us attacking Russia and calling them, state sponsor of terror, that we'd never be able to negotiate. Now, I think that's BS. Ronald Reagan was able to make multiple treaties with the Russians, right? Arms control treaties, but he did a damn good job. And Ronald Reagan was as mean and nasty to the Russians as you could be to the Soviets, right? I mean, he really knew how to get them, but Reagan was able to negotiate stuff. I think I'm not saying we can negotiate anyway, but my point is, I think it's kind of a BS argument, but I guarantee you Biden would not want to call Russia a state sponsor of terror, because he would worry that in the end it puts Putin in a corner and Putin will just keep fighting. Even though, guess what? Putin is going to just keep fighting anyway. Thank you, Zoe, for that. Why don't you want peace? I do want peace. I don't want genocide. Why do you want genocide? Why do you want Russia to occupy 18% of Ukraine and kick millions of people out of their homes? Why do you want that? Why do you want Russia killing children, stealing them, and turning them into Russians, kidnapping small babies and taking them from their parents and making them Russians? Why do you want that? If you can answer that question, let us know. I'm going to guess you can't. What else we got here? All right. So yes, we're doing Q&A now. So I'm just looking to make sure there's no more. Thank you for that, Panther Paws. Let me jump on the TikTok questions here. I don't know when the war is going to end. The war could go for years. I mean, it honestly depends. It depends on what we're going to give the Ukrainians, if we give them enough weapons. Oh, I should mention really quick too. Interestingly, so the United Nations yesterday. Thank you for the hand heart there, Happy Beach. Oh, and another leprechaun. That's right. It is St. Patrick's Day. That's why I picked the leprechaun thing. Who was that? Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. One of the beep, 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 beep. I always do this. I was looking at the gifts. I was going to answer. I saw something really quick here. Rah! Oh, yeah. So the United Nations yesterday came out and issues a report saying that Russia has definitively committed war crimes. They found evidence of the war crimes. They accused Russia of war crimes. Thank you, user, for the March thing. And documents lots of Russian war crimes over the last year. The United Nations then concludes and says, by the way, Ukraine, we did find that Ukraine committed war crimes as well. They committed 2. They tortured and maybe even killed 2 Russian soldiers, they believe. 2 war crimes Ukraine committed involving 2 troops. That's it. Now, obviously, they should be prosecuted, right? Any soldier who did that should be prosecuted. You don't just go and execute people. But the United Nations, in all of its research over the last year, was able to find 2 war crimes that Ukraine committed, lots and lots and lots that Russia committed, right? I mean, not to mention each child they kidnapped is a war crime, right? I mean, you've got 6 to 12,000 or 6 to 16,000 children, right? Very interesting. So yeah, let's keep going here. So questions. So you guys can submit to the Q&A box in my TikTok profile. The Q&A box in my profile is where you submit questions. Thank you, Katen for the leprechaun. And you all can put questions at the bottom. Woo woo Friday. Who was that? Jetta Mom. Thank you, Jetta Mom. All right, let me see here. I got my questions here. TikTok. Here we go. I don't know what's going on. Will you explain? Oh, France. I'm sorry. Will you explain what is going on in France? Okay. I am not totally up on it's not Ukraine, but I'll mention quickly. I'm not terribly up on what's going on in France. They're having a strike. In France, when you have strikes, especially in springtime, which by the way, it's March, they're huge and they turn violent. France does that. It's a thing. I mean, Europe in general, I think, but France especially. Thank you, Susie, for the crown. They commit war crimes. They don't commit war crimes. They burn things down when they protest. Now, in general, thank you, Croix de Leon. I don't know if I've seen you for a while. Thank you for that. More or less, it's about the French retirement system. In France, you're able to retire at age 60, apparently, which honestly, God, I wish, like, what a great thing. I'm guessing the state is trying to roll that back to save money, the state pension, this kind of stuff. I don't know anything about it, but that's my guess. Yeah, so it's the age of pensioners, age of retirement, we would say in America when you get your pension. They're trying to roll it back, and the workers are saying, BS, this is something we all agreed to for years. So there you go. That's France. France changed 62, now is 64. 62. Oh, it's 62 currently. Okay. I saw one of the signs that said 60. That's why I got confused. Oh, maybe it was 60 and they moved it to 62. That's why. Okay. Thank you, guys. The TikTokers are pointing out it was 62 and they're trying to move it back to 64. Okay. Yep. The YouTubers are bringing it up too. Okay. I told you I've not been following it. I got asked. Yeah. UK is 67, soon 68, Netherlands 67. Yeah. No. And they're trying to move ours back too. And ours, to get full benefits, you need to be 67, which they already moved back, which is annoying right there. Oh, thanks, copies. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think it was Europe in general, but I know the French do a lot. Super chat, Jamie. Hang on. Oh, there's Jamie. Here, Jamie. Sorry about that. I already answered that with respect to the arrest warrant. I already did. I said China is not a member, a party to the treaty, and they would never arrest him unless there was something else from Oh, there it is. A second, Jamie. I'm sorry. Thanks, Jamie. Do you think Putin is keeping tabs on where the Ukrainian kids are going so he has a card up his sleeve if arrested? In other words, 10,000 kids for his freedom. If he's smart, he is. Well, here's the problem. Okay. If you're Putin, and again, he probably has easily taken 10,000 Ukrainian kids and kidnapped them, which is why he was an arrest warrant was issued by the International Criminal Court today for Putin to arrest him based on this. All the Ukrainian kids he's kidnapped and tried to turn them into Russians. If you're Putin, it benefits you to know who the kids are because you can use them as bargaining chips, right? You can say, somewhere in a Swiss bank vault, right? I've got a list of every kid and every family they were in. And if you ever want to see those kids again, you're giving me all my money back. You're not prosecuting me, The problem is if he puts all of it on paper, it's more evidence against him is the problem. Now, having said that, that's why me and Ukraine, Klaus is saying the same thing. It leaves a paper trail. That's what my mind went to, the paper trail. That's the thing that I think of is, do you really want to be documenting that on paper? Now they absolutely should have records of where all these kids went. That would be good. I mean, my country had that too. Remember, we had the weird thing with the migrant kids and how we didn't. I mean, that's whatever you think of immigration. If you're gonna take kids and put them temporarily somewhere, you keep track of where they are. And we didn't keep track of where some of these kids were. It was horrible. At one point, it was 2,000 kids. A little different though. We weren't like kidnapping them and trying to turn them into little Americans. But still, no, you should. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Putin wants the paper trail of that. Thank you, Roshan, for that. I didn't see Jamie had a second question. Thank you. Stephen from Canada. Thank you, Stephen. Over all these charges, do you think it will be enough? It will be enough to put pressure on Russia to oust Putin? I don't know whether this one today puts pressure on Russia or not. You never know to what degree the Russians rally around the flag. I mean, the Russians, I read you that story from the New York Times earlier, right? The woman who said, yes, I've taken 4 Ukrainian kids and adopted them as Russians, but that's normal. Ukraine is Russia. So I didn't steal kids. They're actually Russian kids who didn't have parents, and I gave them a new Russian home as Russian citizens. So a lot of the Russians probably think this is like a good thing their country's doing, right? Because first of all, not all of them, but they're presented as, oh, Ukraine, such a poor, crazy Nazi country, this kind of crazy stuff, right? I don't think these indictments put pressure on Putin. I think what puts pressure on Putin is the economy getting worse and worse. Yeah, the Iraqi kid thing. First of all, the Iraqi kid, somebody's bringing up the Iraqi kids. The Iraqi kid thing isn't real, for starters. The study thing is bullshit, but also there's a difference between intentionally and unintentionally killing key people. That person is saying we shouldn't have sanctions on murderers and terrorists like what's his face, Gaddafi in Libya, or Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and I disagree with that. Then we shouldn't have international sanctions on anybody, and we should let every country go and do whatever the hell it wants. Either you believe in sanctions or you don't, but big difference. But also that thing about the children is BS anyway. That's a cute little talking point people like to throw out. I don't buy it. In any case, yeah, the pressure on Putin, on Russia to sort of get rid of him is going to be economic, potentially. The economy just gets so bad and people are fed up with it that they lose this war. Russians have a history, apparently, of kind of overthrowing their government when they lose wars. They don't like that. Basically, it's the idea of your country is weak, and they don't like that, right? It's a weakness, losing a war. That could cause a problem for Putin if this war doesn't kind of turn around, and especially if the Ukrainians are able to get back. I mean, at the very least, Ukraine's got to get back the territory Russia invaded the last year. I mean, obviously, we want Ukraine to get back Crimea, which the Russians stole in 2014. Obviously, I want that back. But I'm talking practically in terms of Russia and everything else. At the least, Ukraine's got to get all of this back. So what happens there is, thank you for the choral there, inspired woman. If that happens, then Russia got absolutely nothing out of this war. Currently, Russia's got new land. All that area in Ukraine I just showed you, all of this area, Russia has annexed, and they're claiming this is, because this is all Russia right here, okay? They're claiming this is now Russia too. If Russia gets to keep that, he's able to point to a real thing he did. He was able to capture all this new land in Ukraine. If that land even if the Ukrainians don't get Crimea, if they get that land back, then the Russians lost 200,000 troops. They lost all this money. They've lost all of this prestige on the international stage. Putin is now, their leader is called a war criminal internationally. And what did they get for it? Absolutely nothing, right? If Ukrainians get that land back. So to me, that's what would put pressure in terms of getting rid of Putin, I think. But Ukraine's got to get the land back, and I ain't convinced we want Ukraine to get the land back. I told you, I still think Biden wants a tie. He thinks that's the better negotiation, and he's afraid of making Putin angry. And I think that's wrong. I don't know. Joanna's asking on Twitch, China and Russia planned on having this huge military training. There is one going on, I think right now, isn't it? China, Russia, and Iran? I think it's right now, isn't it? Will the arrest warrant against Putin or the Hague's ICC have any impact or change to it? No. I mean, the arrest warrant is, again, countries that are signatories to the treaty, and China isn't. So China would feel no obligation to arrest him anyway, because they're not signatories. You know, other now here the thing. This is what I'm saying. The thing that gets interesting for other countries though is, oh, thank you for that. Thank you, Iggy Woman. What gets interesting for other countries is, you know, an arrest warrant from the internet. I was watching the news earlier today, and when I heard the news, I went, "Whoa!" Even though I know getting Putin is going to be very difficult, right? I still went, "Whoa!" And then I was curious because I watch CNN. I like CNN. CNN's very good. I don't want to hear, you know, the BS stuff. CNN's very good, and a lot of the reporters are excellent. And I watched the folks I trust, the reporters I trust on CNN. They all felt this was a big deal. Thank you, Louis, that this was pretty historic. They did this, that this carried a lot of gravitas. Even if it didn't mean Putin was going to get arrested, there was a lot of moral and cultural significance to the moment, okay, in what happened. That impact makes it hard. It makes it hard for future leaders to be seen with Putin. It makes it hard for countries to do. I still think this is going to cause problems with Xi, the Chinese leader, meeting Putin on Monday. It's just embarrassing. You know, China's had enough trouble with this war. I mean, China, let's face it, China sort of threw its lot in with Russia. There were articles that the Chinese felt like they got lied to a little bit by Putin because Putin said it was going to be a quick little war. We weren't going to really invade. We were just going to do a little bit, blah, blah, blah. And then it was a full-scale invasion. It's been going on for a year instead of 10 days. Putin tried to take the entire country and the whole world, right? The whole world is unified against Putin practically. If you're China, this is just one more thing that's embarrassing, you know, even though it's not clear that that's going to stop China from helping Russia. China still may. I mean, China may still give them weapons, or maybe they are giving them weapons. They'll give them more weapons, right? But anyway, no, it's not going to affect the actual training or anything like that. Nah. Oh, Soren, Soren, you might have meant it. Oh, that's a super sticker. Thank you. Okay, I thought you had a question. Thank you for that. And thank you, Roshan, for thank you, Soren. Thomas the Tank. Oh, I remember that name. I think I remember you. I remember that name. Thomas the Tank has a super chat question. Thank you for the butterflies there. Who is that? Carla. Thank you. Are you concerned that China is waiting for our military preparedness to be reduced by the war in Ukraine, then attack Taiwan, knowing that we are the only country that has agreed to defend them? Yes, absolutely. If you're China, the war in Ukraine has done two opposite things. One, it has shown you that the world could be united in a way you did not anticipate, especially America and its NATO allies. I would say America. Well, no, I'll say America and its NATO allies. That includes Canada. You want to leave out Canada. During the Trump years, things got a little frayed between NATO and Europe and America, you know, even Canada, right? Ukraine, Russia turned that on its head. We are now very close to the Europeans, obviously. And this coalition so far is working. So if you're China, you're looking at this and going, this is not good. This means if I invade Taiwan, the Americans and the Europeans and the Canadians might just be able to get together and do the same thing to me, right? Thank you, Flower Lady, for the leprechaun. They might just be able to do the same economic sanctions. Incredible economic. I mean, whether or not they're working enough, the economic sanctions are incredible that were put on Russia. China, it's probably going to be even more painful because China is half of Russia's budget is oil revenue. Half of the money they have for the government comes from their oil sales. Russia is a one-trick pony, or maybe two tricks: natural gas and some minerals. China is selling goods all over the world. China could be in real trouble with the economic stuff. Now, I was going to say there were two sides to this. But the good side for China is America and NATO have just used a lot of weapons on Ukraine, and it's clear we don't, that we need more weapons and we don't have enough in stock. Thank you, Michael, for the whale. We'll do the wave for the whale. Thank you. That was very generous of you. Thank you for that. If you're China, you're looking and going, this is an interesting time to invade Taiwan because America maybe doesn't have the weapons. Having said that, we don't not have weapons. We are holding back. So sure, we don't have artillery. I'm not sure how much artillery we would be using in Taiwan. I don't know, but I'm thinking planes are more important. Ships are more important, right? Cruise missiles are more important. Thank you, Mishka, for the superpower. That cruise missiles are more important. We've got a lot of those. It's 50-50. It's 50-50. Yeah. No, I do think if you're China, you're going, this is an interesting time because NATO doesn't have enough weapons or their weapons are down, but it's a bad time because they showed that they're really willing to be, and they're willing to be unified. And Biden said outright, like 3 or 4 times, he's sending US troops. Basically, he's going to war if they invade China, if they invade Taiwan. If you're China, that gives, people were saying, ooh, that was bad Biden did it. I think it was good Biden did it because he made very clear to the Chinese what was going on. So thank you for that, Thomas. Scrolling down. Nancy with the super sticker. Everyone's out in force today. Thank you, guys. Well, we can go till 7:30. Like I said, this is a long topic. So you're an accountant for the Navy. We have the weapons. Okay, good. Well, I get worried. What I get worried about with the weapons is, though, it does worry me that I get it. Okay, just as sort of background on this. Up until the dissolution of the Soviet Union existed until 1991, okay? The Soviet Union was our big adversary, our big enemy. Europe's too, but, sometimes I think America took it. America and Britain were a little more, whatever. But nonetheless, the Soviets were the big bad guys. They dissolved in 1991. Up until 1991, before the Soviets disappeared, we were very worried about a land war in Europe. We were worried about the Soviets invading with their Eastern Bloc countries, their captives in Eastern Europe. Thank you, Timothy, for that. And we were afraid this tank column was going to come across East Germany into West Germany. I think it was called the Fulda Gap, this sort of area in West Germany where it was pretty clear they would come through. And we had to have massive numbers of US troops for starters in Europe. We all had massive numbers of tanks. I think the Germans had 2,000 tanks, over 2,500 tanks the Germans had. Now the Germans have like 200 tanks, more or less. So the reason is, the issue here was, if we got into a war with the Soviets, it was going to be a land war in Europe. Okay. Thank you, Tina, for that. It was going to be a land war in Europe. So we needed a lot of tanks. Now we don't have a lot of tanks in Europe because once the Soviet Union went poof, we figured it's done. The Soviet threat is over. A lot of the former Soviet states, the Soviet bloc, in other words, the Eastern European countries that were being held captive by the Soviets that imposed communist dictatorships on them, were now free. They wanted to join NATO. Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, the Baltic states. I mean, Hungary. I missed some of these, but they all decided to join NATO, right? So the Soviet threat was gone. So we got rid of a lot of our tanks. The Germans got rid of their tanks. Everyone got rid of their tanks and the artillery. We didn't need, now I don't know where we were on artillery before, but you didn't need a lot of artillery in Europe either because we weren't going to be fighting a land war. Europe, exactly. Me and Ukraine is saying, false sense of security in Europe, and frankly, a false sense of security in America. We figured our big long-term threat was China, and the intermediate threat was terrorism. Right? It's the Middle East, it's Al-Qaeda, it's ISIS, it's stuff like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope to God we have enough weapons to defend Taiwan, but it is true that we've all collectively found out that we're in kind of a weird situation. We're in kind of a weird situation in terms of not really having the artillery we need to be able to give Ukraine to fight. And if Ukraine, we'd be in the same situation. If Ukraine didn't have enough, it's just a little scary. It's a little scary. Oh God. Look, you guys are out of control today with the questions on all right, hold on. I'm gonna mark all of these so I don't lose them on YouTube. Crazy. Hold on. We got a lot of YouTube questions or YouTube super chat questions. India's not a signatory. We've got that. Jamie, third question. I don't mind. If NATO doesn't pull their finger out and Russia does win the war, would that create a problem for grain supplies and other exports, giving Putin the monopoly in the grain market and foods? Yeah. Now, I am not the grain expert. I do know that Russia and Ukraine are two of the largest exporters, if not the two largest exporters of grain in the world. So if Russia were to get Ukraine, Russia, I assume, would have a super monopoly in terms of grain production. That would be a problem. Yes, that would be a problem. Thank you, Marvelous Confetti. Now, I don't know how much. Well, I do know. I believe half of Ukraine's grain goes to Europe, and the other half goes to Africa and the Middle East and Asia. That's a problem. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I just don't know, like on the American front, I don't know whether I also don't know for you guys who gets what. And my guess is that at the very least, it would increase It would increase grain prices in Europe if he cut you off, right? It would increase sort of the price of bread. But that's it. No one's been talking about that. That's really interesting. Well, and that's a similar concern that people have about Taiwan, because the semiconductor industry is so advanced in Taiwan and has such a monopoly in a sense. Not a monopoly, but not a monopoly, but well, I guess it is kind of a monopoly. They control so much of the world market, comes from the high quality semiconductor chips, that if China were to get them, it would be a disaster. Elisa, there you are. Do you think the International Criminal Court warrant could be leveraged for when to reduce sanctions? Well, I guess the question is how? How? I mean, because, both of those are our leverage. First of all, I don't think we have any control over the ICC. The U.S. isn't even a signatory. We don't have any control over the International Criminal Court. They've issued an arrest warrant for Putin. They're not going to pull it back because, the country's reached peace. They don't do that. It's like police. Police aren't going to do that. You killed someone, but you later said, oh, maybe, I guess I'll stop killing your family. And the police say, okay, we're not going to arrest you. So I guess I'm not sure because both of those first of all, we don't have the leverage of the ICC, but also what would the leverage? I guess I'm not understanding. Maybe do a follow-up that you don't pay for that explains. I don't understand what the leverage is for reducing sanctions. Domenichini, couldn't non-signatory countries to the ICC be pressured to arrest Putin with a threat of sanctions? Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. If we wanted to, thank you, Magical. If we wanted to, yeah. I don't know whether we would, and mind you, it depends which country. Smaller countries might not want to piss off the Russians because Russia's still big. Their military sucks, but it's not nothing. You know what I mean? They've got a lot of bombers and everything else. The Navy, for a smaller country, they're certainly going to be way more powerful than a smaller country. Oops, sorry. So they might want to be careful. A smaller country might be like, we're not arresting Putin. Are you crazy? The Russians are going to invade us, right? So that would be a concern, I think, for them. Hang on. Tick-tock, ticky-tocky. Hey, Magical. How much is Putin in danger of being arrested for war crimes if he goes outside of Russia? Quite significantly, depending where he goes. If he goes to Europe, he's getting arrested. Now, mind you, here's the thing. Clearly, here's the thing, okay? If Putin gets arrested, we do worry about war breaking out. Putin gets arrested by Poland. I don't know why he'd be in Poland, but Putin sneaking around Poland or France or whatever and gets arrested. The Russians are not going to be happy. I could imagine a situation where Putin, now mind you, I don't think he's going to do this. Putin is secretly visiting France and nobody's supposed to know, and all of a sudden they find he's there. I could imagine a situation where the French privately let the Russians know, we know he's here, tell him to get his ass out of here. Because France, honestly, most countries probably don't want to be in a position of arresting Putin if he still is the Russian leader, right? Because they'd worry about war. They'd worry about it being perceived as an act. This is just my opinion, but I think they would worry about it being perceived as an act of war. Think about it. Any European country, are they really going to arrest Putin? I don't know. I hope they would, but I don't know if they would. No idea. Let me see here. More from you guys on TikTok. It's not a dumb question. Kimmit is asking, may seem like a dumb question, but it's not. Why has Biden said he would go to war over Taiwan, but not Ukraine? A couple different things. First of all, I think the perception of what's going on in Ukraine has changed, certainly for Americans. I was one of them. Well, first of all, okay, Taiwan. Let's go back to Taiwan. Taiwan, absolutely positively, you go to war over because of the semiconductor chips for me. If they didn't have the semiconductor chips, it gets interesting because China's a nuclear power, a small nuclear power, but a nuclear power and growing bigger and bigger. But Taiwan has the world's market on semiconductor chips, especially the really good ones. 60 Minutes, big American TV show, did one of their shows about this last year, maybe last summer. It might be online. If it is, Google it. It's like a 15 or 20-minute segment, really good, about Taiwan's semiconductor industry and why it's so important. we cannot allow China, who is one of our big two top adversaries, Russia and China is an even bigger adversary for the long term, to take over the world's semiconductor production, in essence. That would be too dangerous of a threat to us. We couldn't allow it. You could get into a lot of, I am not a military expert in terms of being able to talk to you about the rest of the geopolitical importance of Taiwan and all of this kind of stuff. I know as far as the importance of the computer chips. Yeah. Ukraine didn't have that. Ukraine, the big problem with Russia, the big problem with China taking Taiwan is they get Taiwan and we're screwed. The big problem with them getting Ukraine is if they get Ukraine, they might want to do something else that screws us, right? Taking Ukraine, other than the grain thing, which was a really excellent point, taking Ukraine doesn't necessarily screw us, okay? It doesn't necessarily screw us. But I'm sorry, Ukraine. But if they take Ukraine, we're afraid that then Russia is emboldened to take other countries, eventually to go after the NATO countries, to start chipping away at Poland, chipping away at the Baltic states, right? Also, clearly, I'm talking strategic now. I'm not talking morals. Clearly, morally, we care about what's going on in Ukraine as well. But I think if you look at it as losing Taiwan per se is a disaster because of the computer chips, losing Ukraine is not per se a disaster to the America's national security or even Europe's, but it is a stepping stone, a very dangerous stepping stone to war in Europe. And I think losing Ukraine is something where I could see us looking back in 10 years and saying, how did we get into a world war with Russia in Europe? We got into it because we lost Ukraine, right? Whereas with China, you don't even have to worry about what comes next after Taiwan. They get Taiwan and we're screwed. So, I mean, that's why, again, we're talking very Machiavelli. We're talking very, very hard-nosed strategic analysis, not a moral analysis about the morality of what's happening. Biden Biolabs, you're so cute. Cute little Russian troll. They're doing the BS about the biolabs again. It's not even worth getting into. The Russians, I'll tell you anyway. I always like to sort of debunk this stuff because I think it's useful. The Russians were claiming at the beginning of the war because the Russians, they lie a lot. We saw that with the drone, right? We never hit your drone. And then the Americans released the video showing the Russians hitting the drone. But also the Russians claimed at the beginning, and of course, Tucker Carlson on Fox News broadcast this because that's what he does. The Russians claimed falsely, Ukraine had secret American biological weapons labs that they were working with the Americans to create biological weapons and total lies. Actually, and if you Google it, you'll see what it was there were old Soviet biological weapons labs in Ukraine that have already been dismantled, but apparently, I forgot what it was. There had to be some ongoing research or observation of it or whatever, I guess for safety reasons. So it was still, there was still something going on in that regard, but there was no biological weapons research. By the way, where are they, right? Where are these biological weapons that Russia supposedly was going to discover in Eastern Ukraine? They didn't find them, So and again, I won't defend George Bush on this one, just like the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, where were the biological weapons? They weren't there. Same thing here. So I'm bringing it up just because somebody brought it up there. So Machiavelli, see. I'll do a few more. We're still going. I know it's been an hour and a half, but we're still going. I'll do a few more questions because I know folks are into this. Now, remember, like I said, tomorrow morning, TikTok, we've got the subscriber-only chat, the paid TikTok subscribers at 10 a.m. Eastern time, U.S. in the morning. We hang out and it's fun. It's like a hangout. By the way, and we're doing it with Discord as well. $5 and up Discord supporters. And Discord, in case it wasn't clear, you become a paid, Discord's free, but you become a paid Discord supporter by contributing on Patreon $5 a month or up. And then there's instructions there for how to link it to Discord. So that's how you can come over on Discord and join us. We'll be live on TikTok and I'll have Discord live as well on both of my machines here. And we'll just get some coffee, hang out, we talk. It's very casual. We've been having a lot of fun, actually. The last couple months we've been doing this. We've been talking for like an hour and a half, which I don't want this to be an hour and a half, but we've been like so enjoying it. It's been just kind of a fun thing to do. So come by and check it out, just to remind folks. So yeah, a few more questions. Well, the thing is, which of the 123 countries would Putin actually want to travel to? The thing is, so these are the countries that are signatories of the, I guess it's the Rome Treaty, whatever the hell it's called, for the International Criminal Court. Thank you, Michael, for the boxing robe. The thing is, a lot of it's Europe. He wants to go to Europe. Russians love Europe. Are you kidding? The Russians? Oh, the Russians and their Europe. I had it open before. Let me see if I can. You know what's funny? I was going to leave up the page to talk to you guys, and then I closed it. Let me see if I can find it here. Otherwise, I'll do a quick Google. Shoot, I did have it open. You know what? Let me do a quick Google search really quick. Let me see. Signatories to National Criminal Court. Here we go. Parties to the Rome Statute. All right. Europe, for example. Okay. I mean, France, Germany, Greece. I'm trying to find places like Italians, Russians like to go. Certainly France, certainly Greece. Cyprus, I'm not seeing, which is interesting. I mean, but everybody else is there too. Switzerland for their money, right? You can't go to your Swiss bank now because you're going to get arrested. UK, obviously, but I mean, a lot of European countries, Latin America. Oh, thank you for the gift there. The confetti magic. Was it magical? Thank you. Latin America, a lot of Latin America. I mean, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, a lot of Latin American countries. Eastern Europe, he's probably not going to Eastern Europe anytime soon, I'm going to guess. Yep, Eastern Europe, he's probably not visiting. Asia, well, Japan, Cyprus. Okay, Cyprus is a member too. Cyprus is another place the Russians love to visit. Absolutely love to visit. So, you know, there'd be a chance there. God, we got a lot of people tonight. Oh, this is a big topic though. And it's been an interesting topic. I'm glad you guys have been into this. I think I don't know where Putin, they say, may have as much as $2 billion, $200 billion with a B that he's stolen from Russia in the last, Italy is a signatory. Yes. That he's stolen from the Russian basically government over the last 20 years, 200 billion with a B. I mean, how insane is that? That is funny though. If a bounty were placed on Putin's head, according to Mordu, would the Wagner group try to take him out? I mean, that's an interesting, that's an interesting little, that's an interesting idea. Well, this is a good question people have been asking today. Far Phantom, wouldn't labeling Putin a war criminal make him more desperate, ruthless in his acts? I say no, because what more could he do? Seriously, I mean, he's not using his nukes. We've got nukes. He's not using nukes, right? I mean, everybody who says he's going to use nukes, he's not going to use nukes. And what is the nukes? The nukes don't do anything. I mean, a couple big reasons Putin's not using nukes in Ukraine. Biggest reason, they don't help. All the military experts, have been saying that there's no good military explanation for why he would use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. It doesn't actually help him strategically. It doesn't help the military advance their cause. So why do it? Right? The only thing you would use nukes for is trying to scare the Ukrainians into backing down. And let's face it, if Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are going to kill him. The Ukrainians aren't going to back down. They're going to be beside themselves, right? And then he risks losing China, he risks losing India. So there's like no good reason he would use nukes. Otherwise, if you put nukes aside, what else could Putin do with this? I mean, we're talking about whether this International Criminal Court warrant could put Putin in a corner, then what would he do? Well, if there were more Putin could do, short of nukes, or I would add biological and chemical weapons to the nukes, right? Add it all together. Short of those, what more can Putin do? He would have already done it. And we had like a lot of trolls on TikTok today, earlier in my my videos on TikTok. Thank you, 978, for the March thing on TikTok today, saying just that, like, oh, he's going to use the real stuff now. And I'm like, they've been fighting this war for 380. They've been fighting a 10-day war for 384 days. If there were more Putin could do, he'd be doing it. He's not doing it because there ain't nothing else other than nukes. But again, the tactical nukes have no military advantage. All the military guys and gals say zero advantage from him using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. It gets him nothing strategically. It does not advance the Russian war effort at all. But there's so many negatives. NATO would enter the war. China and India might cut him off. It could be a disaster for him. That's the thing. So I don't think at all it puts him in a corner, because he's already in a corner. He's losing the war, or at least he's not winning the war. It's a 10-day war in the 384th day. It's already embarrassing as hell for Putin, so that if he had another rabbit he could pull out of his hat, he'd pull it out already. Thank you, Truthful, for the cap. And again, can't do nukes, chemical or biological, and anything else military, he would have done. Why would he hold back on anything else, right? Sorry, you're not getting nukes, Canausi. No nukes, no nukes, no nukes today. No nukes. Could we see a reward for Putin's capture? That would be funny, Stephen. Stephen is asking, Stephen Marco over on YouTube. Could we get an award for Putin's capture? That would be funny. That would be very funny. U.S. isn't going to do it because, again, we don't want to escalate and make him mad. But I think it would be pretty freaking funny. Imagine putting $50 million on Putin's head or something. Actually, oh my. How's that for a crowdfunding event? I don't know how you would do it. I don't know how the money would have to be money that it would almost have to be money that's triggered in a way. Thank you, Dawn, for the leprechaun. Like I make a $50 commitment that if somebody helps capture Putin and it's proven that person did it, they would get the money, or a couple people's. And I'd make the commitment, and I wouldn't actually give. Well, I was saying Bitcoin. It almost makes me think of one of those what do you call it? But the whatchamacallit with Bitcoin, like those rules. What is it? I'm forgetting. Not the supply chain. What do you call it? You know what I mean? I'm already forgetting my crypto here, but basically setting up these kind of rules for how you could commit it if it happens, but otherwise don't do it, right? So you don't get my money on. Hey, stop that! Stop it! Stop it! Just wait. We're going long tonight, and the dog is getting a little upset because by now we've blockchain. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. By now, I already have finished the show, and I've given her some water in her bowl. It's okay. Hi, thank you. There you go. She goes. She's laying down now. She goes to her water bowl and takes her paw and goes bam, bam, bam. Oh, this is just water. She just was like, I want water. Now she's laying down a little bit. But wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know how you'd use the blockchain or escrow to do it, but to set it up where a bunch of us commit to offering I'd pay 50 or $100, absolutely, for somebody to turn him over to the International Criminal Court. Imagine we could have $100 million pledged. We'd easily have $100 million pledged. The problem is, again, how do you do it in a way that nobody could steal it? How do you do it in a way that nobody could steal it? That's what I don't know. Thank you, Magical, for the star. I saw that. Sean is asking, would it be a public show like Mussolini? Yeah. Well, Mussolini or Ceausescu in Romania. That was the one. I didn't know Mussolini I guess was it his wife or his girlfriend, Mussolini? But Ceausescu was with his wife. Those water fountain things. Yeah, but the dog drinks too much water. That's the problem. I don't want her to keep drinking. It's because then she wakes me up all night to go out. In any case, so that's an interesting issue there. Oh boy, that would be fun. That'd be fun. Oh, Angela just pledged $5 on TikTok. I mean, on TikTok, on Patreon. Thank you for that. Oh, cool. The UFO landing. Hazel, thank you for that. That's a very cool one. I know that. And Ruby for the mustache. Still going on with the gifts here. All right, guys. Oh my God, I'm tired of these questions, but people are into this. It's an interesting topic. I'm telling you, I am not the guy to organize this. Somebody needs to organize. Just give me credit for coming up with the idea. Somebody needs to organize a crowd-funded bounty for Putin's head to be turned over. Hold on. I'm literally going to put this on Twitter as I'm talking to you guys so I don't forget. Okay? Let me write this right now. Someone needs to come up with a way to come up with a crowd-funded bounty on Putin's head. Whoever gets him to the ICC gets the bounty. Crowd-funded bounty on Putin's head. There we go. Okay, now at least it's there. So I've marked my Marked my territory. Jamie, wouldn't it be? I mean, really, it really would be very interesting. Like I said, I'd pledge $100. I'd absolutely pledge $100 for that. Are you kidding? I would totally pledge. Yeah, I would do it. Jamie, fourth question. I know you're in it tonight, Jamie. What if Putin uses nukes, but issues the order from the safe distance with the end goal of ending everything in the motherhood? But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want. The thing is, I mean, fair question, but he doesn't want to. Putin thinks he's Peter the Great. He thinks he's, one of the greatest czars ever of Russia. Like, that's the big guy he compares himself to, Peter the Great. Putin does not want to go down in history as the guy that caused a nuclear war that killed all the Russian population. He wants to go down in history as the guy who reestablished the Russian Empire, right? And who expanded Russia's boundaries into Ukraine and this and that, right? That's who he wants to be. Thank you, Hazel, for that. He doesn't want to be the guy that caused nuclear war and killed all the Russians. So I don't see it happening because, I mean, again, he's not crazy. He's little Peter, yeah, in so many ways. He's not crazy. He has these grandiose visions of Russia, right? The new USSR. His goal isn't to kill his country. His goal is to make his country even bigger and to make it great again, right? Make Russia great again. So that's why I don't see him, pushing the button on his deathbed. On his deathbed, he wants to be remembered as the guy who saved Russia, not the guy who killed it. So yeah, I don't think so. Thank you, C. Carey, for the football helmet. So I wouldn't worry about that, so to speak. People have brought it up before, but I just don't think he's crazy. He's a jerk, but he's not crazy. Jakarta with the butterflies. Any more questions on here? I mean, we could probably more questions, but let's do maybe one or two more questions and we'll call it quits because we were going an hour and 45 minutes, guys. What did Putin say in 14? What did he say? Basically just that the guy's not crazy, but he's a jerk. I'm just curious. What did McCain say? I'm not going to get. There's too many other questions. I can't get to more questions tonight. Sorry, guys. There's still a lot more on the There's a ton of questions still on the screen, but also in my TikTok. I can't get to any more. We've been doing an hour and 45 minutes. I think I'm at the end of it now, guys. All right. I'm not going to do a summary because I'm tired. That was good. We did an hour and 45 minutes. So tomorrow, remember, guys, to if you are a paid subscriber on TikTok or a paid subscriber on Patreon, $5 and up, come by Patreon. It's on the top left corner. It says videos or whatever, and you'll see the thing that's a $5 and up video every Saturday. It says that's where you will see me tomorrow. I will do a video there, and then I'll be doing the video as well on TikTok with you guys, again, paid TikTok subscribers. So both of them will be live at the same time and literally hanging out, cup of coffee or tea if you're afternoon in Europe, and just hanging out, and we shoot the breeze, and it's fun. Now, it's the first time I'm going to be doing the Discord one, and it takes a little bit of finagling, so bear with me on that one, but I should be able to pull it off. It shouldn't be a problem, but hopefully. Thank you for Canalsi for the lock and key. Otherwise, like I said, do check out my Discord anyway. Do check out the auctions. Check out my Patreon. You guys have been seriously, you guys have been very generous tonight, so I appreciate it. I could tell. you guys really came out and supported me, so that's very nice of you. And yeah, the Russian trolls were crazy tonight, but the mods, you did a good job. Thank you. And thanks, guys. Yeah, we've still got 1,200 people on TikTok. Sorry, TikTokers, it's been an hour and 45 minutes. I got to call it quits. Thank you, Elle, for the heart there. But thank you guys so much. This has been good tonight. Otherwise, if we don't join us tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S., do come back Monday night, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. We are here doing the same show. So thanks, guys. All right, I'm going to sign off. Sayonara. You guys, good night. Happy International Drunks Day. Oh, yeah, that's right.